share with you. I want to talk a little bit about the impact in Texas, the challenges that we all face in the workplace. Let's talk about some accommodations, which will all lead up to employers being able to understand the benefits of an inclusive workplace. And I think that's the goal, right? We want employers to understand that there is a need for an inclusive workplace. In order to do that, we're going to give ourselves some new words. Next slide, please. This is our standard definition that we see a lot in talking about disabilities. But before we talk about that, I want to pivot a little bit. Can we change the definition? Is that wrong? Well, I'm going to try. I'm going to say that if we're thinking about a person with a disability, we're thinking about a person. And so I love this definition, but it doesn't start right with me. I would like it to say a person. That's the goal that we're thinking about if we're talking about a person. Now, within that person, they may have a disability, and that is some of the things that you see down here. These aren't the definitions of the disability, but they are ideas of something that could happen because of your disability. Let's look at communicating, right? Communicating is a part of a disability issue for some individuals. Doesn't mean you're not capable, just means you communicate a different way. Mental health. The challenge of mental health happens to many of us, but it doesn't stop us from going in the workforce. Or does it? Because you see, they say a disability is a condition of the body or mind that makes it more difficult for the person with the condition to do certain activities and interact in the world around them. Interact in the world around them. We are, people with disabilities are the smallest section of that. So wouldn't it be a neurotypical environment? It needs to do more of the modification than those with the disability. I want the goal to change. We fight hard. And it's time that some others fight back or fight with us. So we want to give employers an opportunity to understand what is really going on. Next slide, and let me show you what's really going on. We developed the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. That is only 33 years ago. I know that you think that 33 years ago is a long time, but it's not. When we did this, it was equal employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. That's what the goal is. Now, the people with disabilities are supposed to have the same access to employment opportunities. Opportunities. So I had to look up the words. A lot of times you hear the same words over and over again, but we don't talk about what that definition is. Opportunity is to make something possible. So the word opportunity didn't actually give anybody anything. It just made it possible. We need to switch to make it probable. We've been living for 33 years with the possible. We need to move to the probable. Every time someone interviews, every time someone goes to a new location, there should be a probability that they feel comfortable, safe, appreciated, and heard. And when we think about that with the ADA, it takes on a whole new connotation. We don't want to just be an opportunity. We want to be in the field. And so for that, we might need some reasonable accommodation, right? Reasonable accommodation, a modification, an adjustment, something to help do the job that anybody else and everybody else does. Next slide. Now, I'm not sure if everyone can see the word statistic, but everything I just said about the ADA impossibility doesn't quite add up to these numbers. These numbers say that 78% of people with disabilities are unemployed, and we know that could be also underemployed. So what happened to that possibility that the ADA set up 33 years ago?
Sorry.
What happened to the idea that we were all going to be equal? Well, 1 in 4 of us have some type of disability. But 78% are still not employed. This number down here kind of lets you know the reason why. In our labor force, for private, government, state, and nonprofit, the numbers are over 90% without a disability. Over 90%, which means all 3 of these sectors are not hiring many people with a disability. So the question is why? Why does that happen? How could it happen? If we're looking at each person individually, how did we get to this point? Next slide. Well, I know here in Texas, we get to that point because we treat people differently. And if anybody tells you that they don't, we have numbers to say it's different. Can anybody tell me why somebody with a high school diploma and a disability will make $8,000 less than someone without? If we can't answer the question why, then we know the problem lies in the majority, not in the minority. So when we're talking about inclusivity, we also need to make sure we're talking about equality. Our numbers don't add up anymore. And now they're beginning to not make sense. Because for 33 years, we've had opportunities to grow, to learn, and to modify our spaces to include everyone. Next slide. But what happens is, instead of inclusion, we focus more on the challenges. And when we're focusing on the challenges, what we're actually doing is separating and trying to figure out how to solve the issue alone. I'm going to sit in this desk by myself because that's the solution to the problem. No, that's not being inclusive. You might have made an accommodation for someone in the workplace that left them more isolated than before. And if they were more isolated than before, what are the odds that they tell their friends, their family members, that they're working at an amazing place and that they want someone else to be hired there also? How did you get your job? Referral? You knew somebody? But this is the same situation. If your friends aren't referring you or telling you where they work, because they're part of the 78% that are unemployed, or they're part of the group that feels isolated at their job, you will find a workforce that looks over 90% neurotypical, people without a disability. It shocks me sometimes. It shocks me how we're still doing this. But there are solutions. If we look at challenges in the workplace, we always look at it from the lens of the person that has the challenge. But I say, if you're looking at a structured environment, then an individual that has a disability that lends to that structure can actually be an asset to your organization. They're an asset to your organization because they think differently. We grow because we learn more and we think differently. We grow because we make mistakes and then we think differently. To have an organization that doesn't incorporate everyone means that they're not thinking differently. So the structured environment that they developed was not inclusive. So how are we going to help all of these organizations create that environment? Talking face to face, going and meeting people where they are and asking them, what is your fear? It is okay to be uncomfortable. It is okay to not know how to create an environment that is inclusive. What is not okay is to not do it. Is to not do it. We have been flexible. We have been the ones that have been flexible. All those with disabilities have to be flexible every day of their life because they're living in a neurotypical world. So they are required to figure out a bus system differently, or figure out the yellow cab, or figure out how to go to the grocery store on a Tuesday in the middle of the rain. You must figure out how to be flexible. But I don't know when the last time I had to be flexible. In my daily life, I don't have to be as flexible as somebody with a disability. Because I don't have a boss telling me to be flexible all the time. I don't have a boss telling me I need to modify my personality to meet the company culture. They're difficult things to do, but we need to do more training and awareness for businesses so that they can understand this is not a different ask, it's a necessary ask. It is something that has been needed for the longest time. But here is the great thing. We live in Texas, and here we're in Houston, fourth largest home of change. It's time to have a conversation. It's time to get our supportive leadership involved with talking to businesses about why not? What is the fear? And how can we help you with that? Next slide. So let's talk about some accommodations. This is one of the areas through my work that I found that employers get very nervous. I don't know what I need to do. I don't want to spend too much money. I'm nervous about getting accommodations, and I don't even know what accommodations are. I want to challenge all of us to have conversations first and talk accommodations second. I say this for two reasons. Number one, there are some jobs, some experiences that we may have that we don't need an accommodation, or we need a minimal accommodation. It does not say that we don't have a disability. It says we don't need an accommodation for this particular event. An employer needs to know that. We have employers who believe when you say accommodations, you're asking them to redo the whole building. Create a new training manual just for them. That's what they're hearing. We need to help them understand that's not the ask. The ask was for an accommodation. And let's have the conversation first. And then I'll tell you, wow, I can do a lot of this, but this one item, I'm going to need some assistance with. That's what an accommodation is for. The last thing we want a company to do is say, that is not a reasonable accommodation. So the answer is no. There are plenty of reasonable accommodations out there that cost very little money, $500 or less, more than likely, and can do tremendous things. One of the first things is put people to work and keep them there. Comfortable, safe, fulfilled, becoming self-sufficient in the state of Texas. You can ask for an accommodation after you have the job. You don't have to go in your interview and ask for every accommodation imaginable just to be on the safe side. You can have a conversation with the Human Resources Department and say, I'm going to need some accommodations. I'm not sure how many yet. I'm not sure which ones yet. But as I work this job, I would like to share with you some of the difficulties or the challenges I'm having. Now, can you hear the way that sounds a little bit differently than I just need some accommodations? We're trying to get the employer to engage in the conversation. Because we know if we engage in conversation, we feel safer. We feel like we have a friendship. Now we're connecting. And if they're feeling like they're connecting, they can share with you their true feelings, their fears. Fears aren't just one side. There's fears everywhere. So there's that opportunity to engage in conversation during the accommodation acts. So I challenge you to talk first, accommodations second, in order to get employers comfortable with that conversation. See, a lot of this has nothing to do with your disability, more so the individuals that aren't as open and aware of what our world is doing. So, can we have the next slide? So here is the part for the employers. And I hope we have some online watching. If not, share this with them. What is the benefit of an inclusive workforce? Well, I want to ask everybody in this room, what does your Facebook look like? What is your Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X mark, check mark? What does your social media look like? Is it inclusive? I'm holding there for a second just to have you think about it. Is it inclusive? Do we practice what we want every day in our lives? And if we don't, why?
A lot of people don't take into account visual loss, captioning, they don't integrate it into their social media at all.
That is perfect. And let me tell you what I learned. I was in Oklahoma. I used to live in Oklahoma. And we had one of the largest nonprofits for people with disability. I asked one time to go to a deaf conference because I felt that I wasn't aware. I went into the conference, I cried within 3 minutes, I sat in a corner by myself, and I watched a whole room engage, have a wonderful time. And they tried to engage with me, but I was scared. I was uncomfortable. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know what to do. So I shied away in a corner until somebody came up and said, and they gave me my sign name. And it broke the ice for me because they said that I mattered just by doing this. And it changed my perspective and it opened my friendship pool. It made me realize I needed to do more. I needed to do better. And once I knew more and I could do better, I could bring that into the workplace. I could look around the workplace and say, this doesn't seem inclusive. But why? And then I start talking to the coworkers. And they're not very inclusive. Are they mean? No. Are they standoffish? No. They just never have. And so because they never have, they never have. But they are also in charge of hiring. They are also in charge of referrals. They are in charge of the corporations. They're not on our Facebook. We're not on theirs. So we haven't interacted with the people that are doing the hiring in the way that they usually do the hiring. Yes, we have job fairs. Yes, we love workforce solutions. Yes, we have those options, but we also have networking. Not networking within ourselves, but networking in the areas that make us uncomfortable in order to grow. Ooh, that was awful. That's the part I don't like. I don't like networking, but I understand it's me. But what I don't like to do when I network is see people that only just look like me. I can look in the mirror for that. I want to learn, grow, challenge myself every time I go to work, every time I leave my house. So why on earth would I surround myself with everybody who just looks like me? That sounds boring. So I want employers to know that if you're surrounded with people that look just like you. You might be a little bored. So we can change that, because in a workforce that's inclusive, you are fostering innovation. How do you do that? Let's look at this room. If you don't see innovation in this room, let's think about what is happening online. Right now, we are online. We are engaging in person. We are engaging in multiple languages. This is what engagement looks like in the state of Texas, in the city of Houston, in the United States of America. And we can foster innovation because the disability community has more to offer than just to say they are a monolith that just sit by themselves. Everyone is unique, as we all are. So to say disability and then say the person doesn't say the greatness of the fostering innovation, employment development. How many of you have taken a training? I can't see you online, but I know you've done one of those personal development trainings. I know. So here it is, we're doing those personal development trainings with a person sitting next to us that looks just like us. What did we develop? What did we learn? What are we changing? That's our goal. We want to be problem solvers. Well, I don't know about you, but I have never seen a person with a disability not have to solve a problem in a world that hasn't been designed for them. So those are your problem solvers. Well, every employer, the numbers came out and we did a record number of new job growth this quarter. Here are your problem solvers. Here are the innovators. Here are the people that can enhance your reputation, because now your organization looks like all of us, not just one of us. So with that, you begin as a company to have a new perspective on things. How great would that be? How nice would it be to not do the fight every day for inclusion, for equality, for sameness? It's a small ask. Okay, it's not. It's a big ask. I get it. It's a big ask, but it's doable. Right? I have been fighting for over 25 years. I started fighting for my son. I fight for each individual, not for them to be accepted, but for them to be included. The acceptance, that's on them. Not everybody has a great personality. You may not be accepted, but you need to be included. You have a right to be included. And that goes beyond an opportunity. Beyond the opportunity. We need to push further. Next slide. So that is the end of the slide. I wanted to give an opportunity for some questions and answers, because I have a lot of thoughts about how we can move in the direction that we help companies to want to hire the same as they hire any other person. The numbers don't add up to me. Ask me a question, let's figure something out. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Hello. My question is, can we assume that companies have somebody supporting HR for how to react to the conversation on accommodations?
Okay, we like to, but no. To assume that someone has someone to help them to react about a conversation, well, first to assume that they know what that conversation even looks like.
It's less than assume, does HR have to go through training to say, oh, we might employ people with disabilities, this is how we do it?
Employers have a moral obligation, but not a right. They have a right to educate themselves so that they can support all of their staff. But to the degree they support their staff is based on a company's desire. So some companies do more than other companies to become more inclusive. There are going to be some companies that the HR department is not aware of how to respond or hasn't heard many accommodation asks, so they're unfamiliar with that. So that is part of one of the challenges, is helping them to have that conversation. Can you imagine how nerve-wracking or uncomfortable it would be for them to have the conversation and they're not aware? And I think that is part of our barrier, is they don't have the awareness, they don't want to have the conversation. What if they say the wrong word? What if they get themselves in legal trouble? This is my legal trouble expert. What if that happens? So instead they say nothing. And they go on and they hire the person that makes them feel most comfortable. That's the person that's on their social media. Looks like them, makes them comfortable. They didn't do anything wrong. A lot of us do it. We stay comfortable. Yes, ma'am.
How do we get beyond invisibility to employers? Because genuinely, when people don't interact with people with disabilities, we are basically invisible to them. How do we get them to see us not only as potential workforce, but just to see us beyond the wheelchairs, beyond the cane, beyond whatever the disability, my word is difference, beyond our differences, so that we can at least give them the opportunity to interact with us, so we can begin to make a change.
I love that, so I'm going to paraphrase. You're asking, how do we become visible? How? Go to their space. Go to their space, it's our space, it's everyone's space. It is not a disability space and a non-disability space. But the park is for everyone. The mall is for everyone. The sidewalks are for everyone. Go where you want to go. Talk to everyone. Tell everyone your story. Share, give, and I know it's difficult, and sharing is not going to be for everyone. But for those of you who can share a story, but share it in their space. Go to Eventbrite and look at the events that are coming and go. Require individuals to speak and engage and realize that I can't be invisible, no matter whether I'm in a wheelchair, no matter whether I have mental health challenges, no matter whether my vision is impaired, no matter whether I have hearing challenges, I am not invisible. Never will be. Wasn't designed that way. And so moving quickly and forcefully in their spaces and helping them to feel more comfortable. We are all comfortable in this room. I believe we have a comfort level. We have to come out of the comfort level and go into larger spaces. Thank you. And tell them not to let this go.
Over here. Okay.
Hello, people.
Commissioner Nisengro here. I have a question about specifically when employees ask for accommodation and they get a response from their employer that says, like, if we do it for you, then we have to do it for everybody.
I love that question.
Yeah.
When I say that anybody asking for an accommodation should come in with more than just a request, they should have a request and a quoted cited part of the ABA law. Give the employer something that they don't understand, may not understand, but they do need. Quote and cite and say, I'm not saying this just to be saying this, and that according to the law, it is not something you will have to do for everyone else. But my accommodation ask is for this. And if you find difficulty outside of that, I would suggest to you to have an additional conversation with them and talk to them about the ramifications of not giving you your accommodation? What can happen? Why don't you want to give me an accommodation? If it is just for the fact that if you believe you have to do for one, you have to do for others, we debunk that. Now I should have my accommodations. If you still hear no, at first question the organization, and I'm a little nervous for you because it may not be an inclusive environment, and that's not a fun place to be. But if they are an inclusive environment and it's something that you want to be in there, 2 or 3 slides might help teach them. And when we're advocating for ourselves, the biggest thing that we can do is share with others. Because when we're advocating for ourselves, when we're teaching other people, that's when they're learning. Those are the true goals, and that's when things get moving, when we start educating others. That's a great question. Any others? Yes.
Historically speaking, I've worked in advocacy for the deaf and hard of hearing community. And so I'm curious about your experience in interactive processes. Oftentimes, the organizations don't really have foundational structures in place in order to make information accessible. And obviously, the ADA has helped with making some of that possible, but it seems to be sort of on face value. So I'm not sure if that's something that you've seen, and how would you suggest that we manage that when we see organizations that need to make improvements?
Again, I say this to say the fight is not over, so we have more to do. I want to give you an example of a nationwide hardware store who now has Apple iPads for each one of their employees. They hired one deaf person and realized it was a way to communicate with all of their staff. And so now during orientation, everyone gets one. Everyone. So they changed the company culture, but they changed it for the better. Did they need to mention that they had a deaf employee and that's how it started? They don't have to. What they did was they found a solution and they worked around it with minimal cost. Some of you will say, well, an iPad's expensive. Well, so is retraining and rehiring. If you hire the person right the first time, we don't have to retrain, and that $99 doesn't seem like that much. The thousands you can spend on training over 3 to 4 months just to have them quit because they couldn't communicate with you would become a lot less if you bought an iPad. It is things like that. But here is the caveat. We are the ones who have to tell them a lot of times because they don't know. And we have to be okay with they don't know. We have to give them the tools, the training, the awareness to be able to serve not only one person in the deaf community, but as that hardware store did, they service the whole community. The whole community. If there is somebody that works for that hardware store who has autism and has a difficult time communicating, they now have a new mechanism. So it wasn't for the deaf community, it was to better the organization. And that is the important thing. And for that, we have to do the work. Because they don't know. And we do. We've been doing this for years, so we do. So we have to do that. Does anybody else have any questions? Other questions?
Okay, my question is, like that example, are there materials or examples for companies who, or just people when trying to accommodate for multiple types of disabilities to say, oh, an iPad could solve these issues beyond, to make it easier for a deaf person and easier for a person with autism? Like, how do you approach a situation like that to say, I'm including everyone without feeling overwhelmed or without feeling like you're overwhelming someone?
I love that. I would say the first thing is there are some things that you don't know and won't know, hire an expert. There are experts in the field of disabilities that can truly that work in this field, so they know accommodations, they know different techniques to use for training. A lot of companies have a difficult time because they are trying to do it all. And they don't know. I went to school for this, I worked in this field for over 20 years. Why would I expect someone who works in HR to know the same amount that I know? That's unfair, and I don't know much about HR. So I am there to help with that, to help bridge that gap. There are organizations out there that will bridge that gap and make sure that you don't have, the company doesn't have to go through this alone. There are training programs out there, and we're getting more. We're getting more organizations, companies, they have people that they can reach out to get training and opportunities to help grow their program, especially if they have an ERG, they can have a program to help them manage that. Great question. They gave me a clockless room, so I'm. Any other questions? No. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, Akili. Excellent, excellent presentation. Great. We will move on to MLPD reports.
Good evening, everyone. This is Angel Ponce, Director of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. First of all, Ms. Atkinson, thank you so much for such a lovely presentation. I want to echo some of the things that you said regarding disability and regarding being able to engage with employers. I think we can all agree that if people are afraid and about what they don't understand. And so I noticed that a good way to jump into the conversation is to get to know those folks. And when people get to know you for who you are, they understand why you're doing the things that you're doing. And so when we're trying to find our way into a company or an organization to become employed, let's figure out who are the leaders at the table and make our way there so that we can have a conversation with them. Because when somebody likes you, it's really hard to say no to you, right? And so starting right there. Thank you so much. Okay, so first thing first, I want to first welcome Hillary Percher. She is our new staff member at the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. She is serving as our program assistant and is working with John Serrano and Ray Herrera on accessible infrastructure and our communications efforts. So Hillary is in the room. If you want to raise your hand and wave hi to everybody. I said, do you want to share some words? You said, no, thank you. This is our 8th staff member. I think this same time last year, we were about 4, so we've doubled in size. So I'm really excited and very happy about that. Okay, so there has been a concern in the community. Last week, there was a ABC 13 did a news story on a large utility pole or poles that are have been installed by CenterPoint Energy, and these utility poles are large and have prevented access to people with disabilities in sidewalks here in our city. Right now, there are 2 poles that are in the Montrose area. They've been installed in the right of way, and that obviously are preventing not just people with disabilities, but people in general from accessing sidewalks and leading these folks to go onto the street. And obviously that's something that we are fighting against. I talked to Mayor Turner. Mayor Turner is not happy about this. The MOPD is not happy about this. And we've been working really hard to find out what the city will do. We are asking now that the commission, people that are listening in, to contact CenterPoint Energy, to contact your local news companies, and tell them that these utility poles are in violation of the ADA. My team is getting ready to review the franchise agreement. And we will be working with Houston Public Works and the and ARA to make amendments to this agreement. And so we'll be closely taking a look at that. We are also asking that CenterPoint take the necessary steps to create at these 2 locations accessible paths of travel for pedestrians with disabilities and others that may be caused with the interruption of a safe path of travel. So MOPD will keep you all at HCOD updated on any developments. In the meantime, again, I am going to ask that as a commission, we come together and come up with a way to contact CenterPoint and talk to those folks about what they are doing and what they've done. And at the same time, we will work with our departments to push for CenterPoint to create an alternative path of travel for people with disabilities. And like I just mentioned, MOPD will take a look at that franchise agreement and make changes to that so that in future instances, these interruptions do not happen again. Before I continue, thank you. Thank you. That's why you're here, Stephanie. So everybody can still hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I continue with my report, do we have any questions regarding this?
I just have a question. With the utility pole, something that I worked on previously was that they had the bell at the bottom of the utility pole. What we had to do was take a tape measure and measure around the size of the utility pole and see how wide it is and how far it is to keep, so that a wheelchair can go around it to make sure that it's not pushing people into the street. And you also need to find out, is there a reason for the enlargement of the pole? Because that's gonna be an issue with CenterPoint. Thirdly, you're gonna have to have more people to call that in to 311, even if it does come to you. Because if you don't have enough people that cause it or see it as a problem, then most of the time it's not really gonna be considered an issue. It'll be pushed onto the back burner.
Thank you, Tina Williams, for those recommendations. We'll make sure and put those to work.
Well, I did accessibility, so that's how I know.
Thank you.
Yes, this is Ricky Harris. I'm curious. You mentioned the utility pole that's been preventing the sidewalk, and it made me think about other people using the metro bus stops And those areas, are those blocking accessibility to the bus stops? For people with, with disabilities?
To my understanding, the utility poles are not located next to bus stops, but anybody traveling on those sidewalks that are traveling to a bus stop will not have access to that bus stop. And so I went around the Montrose area. There are several other utility poles that have been installed in the neighborhoods. And those utility poles are with it out of the ADA sidewalk. And so this can happen. We are asking that CenterPoint then follow up with the property owners and then purchase some of that land to make that sidewalk accessible to our constituents. My understanding is that CenterPoint has made a large profit. And so a few $1,000s to create a sidewalk is nothing to them. So we're going to push that. And the Mayor Turner is working to make that happen as well. And yes, Sheriff's comments.
Sheriff Wilcox. So I want to make sure I'm understanding. Are you saying that the current agreement allowed for this to happen without conversations between CenterPoint and Public Works? Is that the part that you're reviewing?
So that is the part that we are currently investigating. The franchise agreement, from my understanding, says that CenterPoint has to report to Public Works or to the city when they are going to do this. It does not say how long in advance, and it does not say how. And so that is where we will come in and work with Public Works and the planning department to set those expectations.
Right, and if there needs to be an approval before they move forward with this
Yes.
work.
Chair, where are they exactly in terms of if we're bringing complaints to CenterPoint or to city representative, we say the poles that are on this and that, or can that be shared with us?
We will make sure and get the exact intersections where the poles are located to the commission. I know that one, I think it's on, I forgot the name of that street, but it's close to Richmond. It's close to the West Ray area, and so people with disabilities that are traveling through that space to get to businesses nearby do not have access to them. But we'll make sure and get those intersections too. All right, so let me continue. Let's see. So for the month of September, we served over 1,510 people through a combination of casework, community outreach, and presentations. Throughout the month of October, we will conduct 4 trainings on disability etiquette for adults, disability etiquette for children. We'll do an MOPD 101, and we will also host an information table at a local community center. So if you have questions on our information and referral service program, or if you have constituents that need assistance, please connect with Senior Community Outreach Coordinator Stephanie Heckton by email at moPmail@houstontx.gov or by phone at 832-394-0814. Regarding accessible infrastructure, MOP reviewed 17 applications and have facilitated the construction of 6 park projects since the last HCOD meeting. For those that are new to the commission, the parks is for our pedestrian accessible review program. This is a program that we facilitate in collaboration with Houston Public Works to ensure that sidewalks are accessible to constituents. people that do come across sections of sidewalks or curb cuts that are not accessible to them, they can contact our park program coordinator, John Serrano, by email at mopemail@houstontx.gov or by phone at 832-394-0814. I want to now thank Alexander Jewish Family Service, the Houston Adaptive Sports and Recreation Division, and other partners and volunteers who joined in the effort of the unveiling of a sign at one of the garden beds at the Metropolitan Multi-Service Center in mid-September. Our partners have graciously donated bags of mulch, compost, planting mix, and garden tools and garden markers so that the volunteers have what they need to continue to nurture the garden bed. So we are certainly very excited about what happened, and we're looking forward to phase 2 of this project in spring of 2024. So I'm gonna ask that the commission be involved in phase 2 as well. On Tuesday, October the 10th, at the University of Houston, we hosted the 17th annual Houston White Cane Safety Day. It was a huge success. And next, we have the Houston Community White Cane Safety Day this Saturday, October 14th, hosted by Houston Council of the Blind and the National Federation of the Blind and others at the Metropolitan Multi-Service Center at 1475 West Gray. I believe the event begins at 9 a.m. To 1 p.m., but you know, we'll make corrections to that and share that information on. So please join us on Saturday. I also want to briefly mention the Getting It Right workshop, a virtual all-inclusive emergency planning workshop series from October 17th through the 19th. On Tuesday, we will have a conversation around emergency and disaster preparedness. On Wednesday, we'll have a presenter speak on emergency preparedness for dialysis. And on Thursday, we'll have our very own Chair Silcox and Vice Chair Harris and myself speaking about the MOP, HCOD, the committees of the HCOD, and what does emergency preparedness mean for people with disabilities here in Houston. We'll engage in a conversation and talk about what we've done in the last few years. Last but not least, the Mayor Sylvester Turner Disability Celebration was a huge success. I want to again thank Chair Silcox and Vice Chair Harris for your dedication to this event as well. Stephanie Hecton and the MOP team who worked tirelessly to coordinate and make this celebration the best celebration that we've had thus far. Councilwoman Abby Kamen presented the Champion of Inclusion Awards, and she is still talking about it. So she was very excited to do that. This year, our sponsors helped us reach our financial goals. So I want to send a huge shout out to them. They know who they are. So thank you. Also, a huge thank you to the Houston Adaptive Sports and Recreation Division, Chuck, Hannah, Nolan. We couldn't have done this without you as well. And also Ms. Curley at the MMSC, who was our MC and did amazing. We appreciate her very much. Thank you, commissioners, for all of you that made it to the celebration. Your presence was very much appreciated and kept. I'm also, I said last but not least, but I have one more item to ask of the commission. The MOP have graciously taken minutes for a very long time now. And I am going to ask that the commission come together and decide together who in the commission would like to take up this very important responsibility. So Chair Silcox and Vice Chair Harris, let's work together to see how we can make this happen so that my team can dedicate their efforts to the community as well. That's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for your report, Director. We've got some new commissioners on, so we're excited to welcome them on to the commission, and I will be reaching out and personally asking if you'd like to be secretary. So look forward to that phone call. All right, we're gonna move on to the MMSC report. Do we have Chuck or Hannah? No one?
You have Hannah.
Yay!
Hey, hello team. I don't have a whole lot. We had our first wheelchair basketball tournament of the season this past weekend, the Larry Turner Classic at Texas State. It was our first time ever that West Gray had a prep team participating. So these kiddos are 6 to 14 years old. They're called the Little Rockets. So our adult teams is the adult Houston Rolling Rockets, and our prep team is the Little Rockets. So they won their first game. They had their first experience. Some of them made their first baskets. It was pretty incredible. So if you're interested, check out the Houston Adapted Sports Club Facebook page, because we put, of course, their parents took 100 photos and they're wonderful. So check out the pictures, support our kiddos. Our adult team also came in. We came in second. We lost to Austin, but don't worry, they're coming to Metal and Muscle. So we will have another crack at them again, and hopefully several more times in the season. The next thing that's going on is Halloween. We are going to have a Halloween Tabata Tuesday. Halloween's on a Tuesday. Heck yeah. So it's going to be Tabata Booze Day. So wear your zombie outfits and come out and do Tabata, and we're going to dress up, and we're going to put a bunch of Halloween stuff. Chuck's already game planning. Ozzy has his costume ready. So come with your costume. We're going to have some raffle prizes only if you participate in Tabata. So it's a win-win for everyone. So come out for Halloween. The biggest thing is Metal and Muscle coming up November 3, 4, 5. Right now we have 10 rugby teams. We're going to have over 10 basketball teams, 6 power soccer teams, sitting volleyball, wheelchair lacrosse, wheelchair soccer. We have military adaptive court sports coming in to host a variety of different court sports, specializing in military service members, veterans, wounded warriors. It's going to be huge. It's at George R. Brown. We need a lot of volunteers. We need a lot of support. We're partnering up, thank goodness, with our saviors from MetroLift to help us out with airport transport. So more shout outs to MetroLift. But if you want Metal and Muscle information, all of it's on social media, or I can email you the flyers. Stephanie, I think, has all the flyers for all of our stuff too. So if you want to get with her, I know you guys have her contact information. She has mine. Other than that, unless you guys have questions for us, that's all I got.
Always sounds so exciting. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Last month, we discussed the committee changes. I sent that email out, as well as confirming that I had good email addresses for all the commissioners. So everyone, except for the new commissioners, should have a copy of the committee changes. So committees as they are now are education and employment, community access, transition and housing, emergency preparedness and first responder training, planning, membership, and community engagement is the transient type committee, meaning that we're only going to be meeting when we have an upcoming event or something that we're planning as far as community engagement. So there'll be calls out to participate on any of those planning committees as needed, and that could vary. So maybe you help planning with one, but you don't help planning the next one. So it's not full commitment on that committee. New commissioners will be reaching out to you as well to see where you might be interested in serving in the future. And with that, if any of the commissioners who are on have had an opportunity to meet with their committees or have designated a committee spokesperson, we would love to hear any committee reports at this time. Do we see any online?
No one has come off mute.
Hearing none, we'll move forward. If you have a committee update, just interject and we would make room to be able to hear that. Are we having an APA update this month from Marshall?
Marshall just emailed and said that he is on, but.
I'm here. I just
You're- okay.
wanted to make sure that if I had any connectivity issues, that would be conveyed to the commission. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I don't have a report today. However, please look forward to hearing the third quarter update information in November. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. All right, Angel did an incredible job speaking about our upcoming events, so I will go over them one more time. We have the next Viking Safety Day coming up October 14th. That's this Saturday. The next TWC listening session was brought in public comment. We had one today. There'll be another one on the 17th at MMSC. Metal and Muscle is coming up November 3rd through 5th. And I want to highlight that early voting begins October 23rd through November 3rd. If you are needing help locating your polling place, go to harrisvotes.com/vote-centers. To locate your polling place. Early voting often does not take place at the same location as your regular voting polling place, so make sure that you look that up before you head out to early vote. Our next meeting is scheduled, next commission meeting is scheduled for November 9th. It will be fully in person, located here at the TranStar Center at 6922 Katy Road, Houston, Texas, 77024. We are expecting to have all commissioners participate in person at this location. If you have questions about the location, feel free to email myself or Stephanie. We can answer those questions. Look at your maps, plan ahead. There may be traffic, or like me today, there are some school zones that you may be driving through, so it may delay your trip over, but plan for next month, November 9th, to be here at the TranStar location at 6922 Katy Road. Any commissioner comments?
I can have one. Vice Chair Harris races. Okay, Vice Chair.
Commissioner Sanger, I do have something to add on voting. Because I know Chair Silcox gave the website, but I thought it might also be helpful to give the phone number just in case you can't access the website. So the voter line for Harris County is 713-755-6965. And that's going to get you to the voter information line where they will tell you what your nearest polling location is. Yeah, 713-755-6965. And they'll be able to tell you where your nearest location is, but remember, you don't have to go to your nearest one, but they'll tell you where you can vote.
She pulled it out of my mouth about. So if we need an accommodation or accessibility, if you're not knowing who, please contact all of us at MOPD. That will help connect you to the right people. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments online? Hearing none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Vice Chair Harris, I propose to adjourn this meeting.
And a second? Second. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I look forward to seeing you in person at next month's meeting on November 9th.
Go ahead and close the meeting. Thank you.
Okay.